So today we're going to talk about color and the use of color in our work. I think it's very important to start out by talking about what we're trying to do when we're doing graphic design. Really, the goal of graphic designers is to communicate, right? To communicate visually. But even more than that, you're really trying to convey meaning, something more than just the words or the images alone would say. You're trying to get to the essence or the core being. And you're really, I guess the simplest way to say it is you're trying to convey meaning. So color obviously conveys meaning. We all have associations to color, but there are actually some studied effects of color and different ways that we can employ color to ensure that we are conveying the meaning we are intending to convey. So let's talk about the psychology of color. And I like to start with this rainbow because it's just so darn happy. So colors convey meaning, they call attention, they can make connections, and they set a tone. We have two basic kinds of color, I guess. We have our warm colors and our cool colors. Those warm colors consist of orange, red, yellow, and combinations of similar colors. And as they indicate, they tend to warm us up, to rev us up, to make us excited. They make you think of warm things like sunlight or heat. And then the cool colors are typified by the blue, the greens, the light purples, and they really are more soothing and calming. They really make us think of things like water or sky or even snow or even ice. When using color, you want to leverage the colors. You want to leverage them to convey your intent. So before you can start using them, you have to first figure out, what is my intent? What am I trying to say? What am I trying to convey? Then once you figure that out, you can leverage those colors. You can employ those colors in your designs to then communicate that intent. So here's some basic thoughts on color theory. So yellow stimulates the mental process. It makes us alert. It calls us to attention. It also stimulates the nervous system, and it does activate memory. Yellow is also considered to be the happiest color. Think about things you see where they use yellow. It can be used for warning, so that stimulates you, right? But it also can definitely be used to convey happiness. Think of all those emojis we use. Then we have orange. And orange also is a stimulant because we're in the warms now, right? And it can stimulate activity. It can increase your appetite. It does inspire social behavior. And it is considered to be the most controversial color. If you ask someone of color they really don't like, a lot of times people are going to say orange. And then other people absolutely love it. But think about where you might want to use this. Where might you want to stimulate activity? How about at a gym? Where might you want to increase appetite? Well, of course, any kind of restaurant, right? Or any kind of social behavior. Are you going to probably want to use this for a bank or a lawyer or a doctor's office even? Probably not. So you need to think about that intent. Now, red is definitely one of those hot colors. And it absolutely stimulates energy. It can also raise your blood pressure and inspire action, and it can inspire confidence. It gives us that sense of protection, but it definitely draws more attention than any other color. So you have to think about these things and the positive and the negative of that. Do we want our blood pressure raised all the time? Do we always want to be excited? This might be great, again, for athletic teams. Think about how many of them wear red. Or think about warning. We use it for ambulances or stop signs, right? It's calling attention. But sometimes you want to be calmed down. So if it's a yoga studio, is that going to be the best color you want to use for it? Again, maybe not for a bank, because I want my banks to be dependable and trustworthy. So then we come to pink. And pink is still warm. Obviously, pink is derivative of red. So like red, it does create that sense of energy, and it can also raise your blood pressure. It can inspire confidence. It is considered youthful, fun, and exciting, but you have to think of the flip side of that, because it can also be considered immature and not taken seriously. Pink has been having a heyday for a while. They even call it millennial pink. It's been very popular for quite some time now. I don't see it going away. Now, purple can be warm or cool, because if you think about how we make purple, we combine red and blue. And red is warming you up, but blue is going to cool you down. So it is considered to be very uplifting. It does create a calming feeling. It's often related to spirituality. It does encourage creativity, and then it melds that stimulation of the red with the calmness of blue. A really great book is The Secret Stories of Color. It's a Secret Lives of Color. And it talks about how purple became the color of royal because it was a very hard color to find the pigment, because original colors all came from original pigments that were found out in nature. So they had a harvest, and they actually harvested purple, this one specific purple, from these snails that they had to milk to get that color from them. And it only showed that color when it was exposed to air. Isn't that fascinating? It's a really wonderful book. I'll put a link to it. Blue. Blue creates a feeling of calmness. It is considered to be a cool color. It promotes productivity, but it's also considered to be the most trustworthy and dependable color. It just made me smile when I saw this, and I heard the name, and I see its pronunciation of blue. Think about all the places you see blue. Two big ones that come to mind to me are Facebook and Twitter. They use that blue, right? A lot of banks are going to use blue. Lawyers, doctors, they're trustworthy. They're dependable. It also calms us. So yoga studios could very well want to use that. Now green creates a soothing feeling, and it relaxes you both physically and mentally. It helps alleviate nervousness and anxiety, so it's going to calm you down, make you feel at calm or at peace. And it does offer us that sense of renewal and harmony. We say going green. I'm being green right now. That means we're trying to conserve, and we think of our environment. So it's very much it's a calming, even though it can get on the cooler side or on the warmer side. If you add a lot of yellow to it, you can super cool it down by adding more blue to it. And then white promotes a sense of clarity. It does encourage you to declutter. It symbolizes new beginnings and purification, and it is one of the most neutral colors in the spectrum. Of course, we can't do design work without white. And then the opposite is black, which is considered to be restful. It promotes that power and authority. It can be overpowering in large doses, but it can also evoke strong emotions. A lot of people, I wear a lot of black. It's definitely a color worn by artists and designers, for sure. And then gray, one of my absolute favorites colors, can be cool or warm, and that really depends on how you're mixing it. It can be unsettling for some people because it's not white and it's not black. It's somewhere in between. And it does tend to create expectations. It is considered to be the color of the intellect, and is seen as long lasting, and it can be elegant, it can be refined, it can be sleek, and it can really vary. I was actually painting my bathroom, and I got all these gray samples, and when I put them up on the wall, I'm like, that's not gray, that's purple. That's not gray, that's brown. That's like weird blue. So they really run the range, and it depends on how you're mixing it. Now, RGB versus CMYK. RGB is red, green, and blue. And these are additive colors. That's when you're mixing with light, and that's when we're dealing with displays, like what we're looking at right now, screens and websites. That uses the RGB, or the light, and it's additive. The colors on top of each other create. Then CMYK are the subtractive colors. So it's basically the colors being subtracted. Not the print itself, but basically you're seeing what is being absorbed, right? So it's really what we use for print. So it stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. The K stands for black because we can't use B because that would be blue. And it's optimized for commercial printing. So using color harmonies in your work, or using color in your work, the color harmonies. So let's look at these specifically. Classifications of colors. We have our primary, which are the red, blue, and yellow. And we have our secondary, which are the orange, purple, and green. And then hue, if you use the word hue, it really just means color. And here you're seeing we have our primary, our secondary, and then we also have our tertiary. So those are the orange yellows, the yellow greens. Tint, tone, and shade means you are, and this is when you're mixing paint, but you can really kind of consider it even when you're working digitally. So tint is when you're adding white. Shade is when we're adding black, and tone is when you're adding gray. And you can see what that does to that color. It changes it, it changes its tone, right? It changes the way, what it conveys, the meaning that it conveys. So color rules and harmonies, they're all based on the color wheel, which we see right here, and we've been looking at. We have monochromatic, analogous, complementary, split complementary, triad, and tetradic, and there are more, but these are the basic ones. So let's look at these individually. We have complementary, which means they're opposite each other on the color wheel. They have the highest contrast and high energy. Red with green, purple, blue with yellow, and orange with purple. But they can really clash and visually radiate or bleed. So you do have to be careful when you're using them. Probably not going to want to use them for type that needs to be read because it's going to bleed too much. And it's going to make it hard for us to read that type. If you want something really dynamic and high impact, let's use that complementary color. Split complementary is adding in one more color and using a variation of not directly across, but the two adjacent to the one directly across from it. So it's a variation of the complementary color scheme, has that same strong visual contrast as a complementary color scheme, but has less tension. It's a really good choice for beginners because it's really difficult to mix it up. Triad or tetradic, these are colors that are evenly spaced around the color wheel. They have definitely less contrast and complementary, but they're still quite vibrant, even if you use the pale or unsaturated versions of your hues. And now we're getting to the ones that are have less contrast, analogous. These are ones that are right next to each other on the color wheel. They're right next door. They match really well and they create more serene and comfortable designs. They're often found in nature and are harmonious and pleasing to the eyes. And they're not as dynamic as the other harmonies, so they're much lower contrast. So again, let's think about that intent. Before you start any of this, you have to figure out what is that intent? What is the meaning you're trying to create? And how can I employ? How can I leverage? So if I'm making something for a punk rock concert, I'm probably not going to use analogous. That doesn't seem like it's going to work very well. But maybe if I'm doing it for something more like Mozart or Beethoven, maybe then I'm going to choose something in the analogous realm. And then monochromatics gets confused with analogous. It's not the same. Monochromatic means you're working with one singular hue, and that is going to be variations on that hue by adding the tint, tone, or shade. It can also be achieved when you're working on Illustrator with opacity. It's very pleasing, but it may not be very dynamic. It may not grab attention. So if you really want to get people excited, monochromatic may not do that. But you might use it, and then you might pair it with that complement to really give it that sense of contrast and create something a little bit more dynamic. So again, I'm going to keep harping on you throughout this whole semester. Know your intent. You can't do a design if you don't know your intent, if you don't know what it is you're trying to convey. So then once you figure that out, you're going to ask what color harmony is going to best support this. Do I need to use that high contrast of complementary or split complementary, or am I going to go with something more analogous so it's more peaceful and calm? If it's going to be really vivacious, maybe you're going to do that triadic. Think about that. And then most importantly, I want you to experiment and I want you to have fun. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out and I'll talk to you later.